told LBC what today means to him.
Servicemen and women, not only in the armed forces, but also in fire service, etc., have given their lives for the benefit of the rest of us. And I find the ceremony at Whitehall at the Cenotaph, led by the monarch, to be profoundly moving and a very right thing to do.
While Chief of Defence Staff Sir Nick Carter says today serves as a reminder of why Remembrance Sunday matters.
These days that fewer people probably study history or certainly know history. And on the back of that, I think anniversaries are a chance to bring some of that to life.
In other headlines this hour, the Met Office says the UK is in for a week of heavy rain as communities already affected by flooding remain on high alert. Across England and Wales, there are 59 active flood warnings and 92 flood alerts. Yorkshire and Derbyshire are worst affected, with a warning of a risk to life along the River Don in South Yorkshire. 7 severe flood warnings remain in place there. Dwayne, a security guard for a flooded business nearby, has told LBC everyone is pulling together.
The pub down road for your shoes, the lady, landlord Louise, she's had to suffer a lot because half her stock in cellar's gone due to she's literally side of the River Don. She's literally for 3 nights been pumping water out. People have been helping, customers have been helping her.
Labour is accusing the Conservatives of producing fake research. The Tories claim the opposition's spending plans would cost the UK more than £1 trillion over 5 years, but Labour insists the study is based on bad math. Speaking before those figures were released, Liberal Democrat leader Jo Swinson said her party will always be up front with voters.
When you look at the way the Labour and Conservative parties are setting out plans at the moment, they do seem to be rather throwing any financial responsibility out the window, and so we're always going to be clear about how we're going to pay for the policies that we set out.
Emergency crews in Australia are continuing to bring bushfires under control, which have killed at least 3 people. More than 70 are still burning across New South Wales. Employees with Asda could be out of a job this morning after a deadline to sign new terms passed at midnight. The supermarket is threatening to dismiss those who don't sign them, insisting its revised terms and conditions will leave its employees better off. LBC weather. Showers on eastern coasts of England and Scotland. Dry with sunny spells elsewhere. A high of 10 degrees. From Global's newsroom, for LBC, I'm Philip Chrysikos.
It's 6 minutes past 11. As you know, at 11 o'clock, over the course of the election programmes on a Sunday morning, we're interviewing a leading politician. We interviewed Richard Tice on the first Sunday. Last Sunday, who was it last Sunday, Henry? I've already forgotten. We had John McDonnell on Tuesday and Shukra Amina on Thursday. Today I'm delighted to welcome Sian Berry into the studio. She is co-leader of the Green Party. Sian, welcome.
Hello.
What are your ambitions in this election? Because obviously you've only got one MP at the moment, Caroline Lucas. Is success getting 2? Is it getting 5, 10?
Well, we've got at the moment 11 seats where we are set to be the strongest, most principled Remain voice who can win. So we are looking to increase our numbers considerably in this election. And it couldn't come at a better time. I mean, we've now got a parliament that might last for 5 years. We've got 10 years to solve the climate emergency. If people don't put more Green MPs into parliament this time, by next time it could be too late. So we are doing everything we can, using every tool at our disposal to get more Greens into that next parliament.
Now, I should have said you can watch us over the course of the next hour if you'd like to watch us via the LBC website at lbc.co.uk, YouTube page, Facebook page or Twitter feed. And we will be taking calls at around 11:30, 0345 6060 973. Sian, we've been talking about tactical voting over the last hour. Gina Miller's launched a new website today. Do you approve of tactical voting?
Oh, I hate it. I mean, in the European elections, if you remember, there was a lot of people saying we seem to vote tactically. I mean, that election was under proportional representation. There was no question at all that people could vote for what they believed in. And the results vindicated that. Strong group of new Green MEPs doing a fantastic job since they've been elected. Now, in this election, obviously, we have the horrendous first past the post system. But we've also got this plethora of tactical voting websites offering often different advice, using different data, different spreadsheets. I don't think it's helpful at all. I think it's confusing to the voters. What we've been doing with the Unite to Remain initiative is try to do some tactical campaigning. The system is broken. At the moment, people's votes are not reflected in the number of MPs. So what we've done is work with Plaid Cymru and the Lib Dems, who are also strongly Remain parties, to try to make sure that we get something that represents more of the Remain majority that's in the country. country in Parliament by standing at one united Remain candidate in these 60 seats. And that's something that we've done, and it's clear to the voters there what the parties are doing. It's honest, it's upfront, it's open. Some of the things in the spreadsheets and these tactical voting sites are very opaque, and I don't think that's helpful.
But I'm not sure whether it's logical. If you want to be in favour of this so-called Remain alliance, how can you then argue against tactical voting? I think it's bizarre.
Well, there's no need to think about the tactics if you've got one strong, principled Remain candidate standing in your constituency. That's very clear. The parties are being honest there about the failings in the system, and we're saying to people, this is where we can reflect people's views more in Parliament. These are the important seats. Elsewhere, vote for what you believe in.
But how honest is it and how principled is it? Because you are still putting candidates up against strong Remainer, Labour and Conservative candidates, people who, for them, it's the biggest issue, and they will always vote to Remain in some way. I mean, I'm not sure I can name specific people because of electoral law, but we all know who we're talking about. You're putting up a Green candidate against a Labour candidate in the Southwest who has got a strong track record of supporting Remain. So why would you put a candidate up against somebody who essentially agrees with you?
I mean, the actual process of deciding which seats to go in this took months and months of discussions. There's lots of different things that are layered on top of the choices, and one of them is, what seats are we already strong in, what seats are we already targeting, what seats were already held. Those are questions that went in there, and I probably can't name the constituency given what you've just said, but certainly in some areas the Labour vote has collapsed enough that Labour cannot win those seats. Only a strong Remain candidate can win, and certainly our candidates can bring over, for example, Remain voting Conservative voters would vote Green. They wouldn't vote Labour in a million years, and so we can, as Green candidates, mobilise that vote more effectively, and that's the reason we are needed in those constituencies where Labour would lose to the Conservatives. Otherwise, we didn't make these choices lightly. There's a lot at stake, and we didn't want to get it wrong.
Now, this is being dubbed as the Brexit election. How comfortable are you with that? Is that what you're going to be campaigning on generally, or are you going to be also campaigning on your more traditional issues?
It's quite clear that there's two major issues that voters are worried about in this election. Two very big choices that people have to make. One is our situation with Brexit, but also this is our last chance to do something about climate chaos, our last chance to really put in place the targets and the investment needed. We've gone so slowly so far. We have to go much, much quicker in the next few years. So it's really important to many voters how the climate change policies of the parties fall out, how strong a voice Greens are in the next Parliament to make sure that the action is taken. I think more than half of voters are saying that climate change will be an important issue for them when they decide how to vote. Amongst younger voters, that goes up even more. And we've got record numbers of young people now registering to vote. So I think this has to be the climate election, and it has to be the one that finally sorts out Brexit.
Well, weren't you stuffed in these negotiations as to which seats you're going to stand down in? Caroline Lucas said to me a couple of weeks ago that she was worried about this because she thought that in the last general election you had been maybe a little bit too kind to the other parties and stood down too many candidates. In this, you are standing down in, I think, 51 seats, and you're getting others to stand down in 9 of your target seats. That's a pretty big imbalance, isn't it?
In the last election, there was no alliance whatsoever. All of the decisions that were made locally, usually just under huge amounts of pressure from the other parties. And that is not healthy. That is not great. I'm party leader here. I've got to protect my local parties from that kind of pressure. And so making a strategic decision to work with other parties, discussing things in an open and honest and constructive way at a national level, making a plan that actually makes sense, and then also getting the consent of all the local parties who are involved in this. That was really important too. It was a very iterative process. That is much better way to work. What does that mean? And I would love for Labour to have come and talked to us about this. It's so frustrating that they are still thinking that they can win a majority, that only Labour can win, and they're still putting pressure on our candidates when actually they could have come and talked to me, and they didn't. They absolutely refused.
So apart from these 51 seats, are you guaranteeing to stand in every other seat in England and Wales?
We are going to stand, despite this arrangement, we're going to stand in a record number of places in England and Wales. That's the beauty of it. You know, the strength is saying this is a limited arrangement in some seats. We are standing in as many seats as we possibly can elsewhere. And that will give more people than ever a chance to cast that really strong vote for climate action and for staying in the European Union in more places than ever. We got 2 million votes in the European elections. We know there are people out there wanting to cast a vote saying we need that climate action, we need more Green MPs, and they'll be able to do that in more places than ever.
How much do you care about animal welfare? Which, I suppose is a rhetorical question, because, of course, you're going to tell me
Greens
that
have always led the way,
thing.
talking about strong policies on animal welfare, and that's something that our MEPs work on really hard as well.
Because while we stay in the EU, we can't ban the live export of animals, can we? Whereas if we leave the EU, we can, and the Conservatives are promising to do that. So from an animal welfare point of view, it is better to leave the EU.
I mean, there are on the Brexit issue, as with everything, there's always some things on the pro side and some things on the anti side. I mean, obviously with Brexit, the Remain case is unbelievably strong, but yeah,
apart from if you're an animal.
Within the European Union, we've got Green MEPs arguing incredibly hard for bans on live animal exports and all kinds of animal welfare issues, and there are blocks within the European Union that stop that from happening. But we won't stop fighting, and that's another reason to put more Greens into the European Parliament.
But you accept that Conservative policy on live export of animals is actually greener than your own?
No, our policy is for that. If we were the government
they
of
can
the
implement
UK,
it if they leave the EU.
We would want to be doing that. Yeah, but that's not. But their policy is contingent upon leaving the EU, along with all the other attendant things on the negative side of that balance. So yeah, you can't just do it one issue at a time. It's the bigger picture that you have to look at, and you're losing freedom of movement, losing the ability to work, to study, to marry, to move, to have friends
you can't say
other European countries that you can see without getting a visa.
You cannot say you've lost the ability to marry a European citizen if we leave the EU.
You've no idea the amount of European citizens there are who've got marriages between different, and they've never gone to do anything to regularise that to become UK citizens because they haven't needed to.
No,
and
that's
now
nothing to do with marriage.
They're facing loads.
Do you want to just clarify that people will still be able to marry European citizens after Brexit?
But will they be able to move here? What will the income conditions be on that? I mean, certainly I've worked with people who have partners from outside the EU, and there are huge amounts of paperwork you have to send in to just get your visa renewed, and you can't just move people over.
All countries have those regulations.
I've got friends who've moved to America because America's rules on this are much less stringent than ours.
But you would like to clarify that people will still be able to marry EU citizens.
You will. Well, you'll be able to live together in the same country. It's quite a little bit uncertain still, Ian, I'm afraid.
Well, lots to talk about. We're going to come to your calls in about 15 minutes. 0345 6060 973. We're speaking to Sian Berry, the co-leader of the Green Party. You're listening to LBC at 16 minutes past 11.
LBC. With the new Halifax Family Boost mortgage, children can get help to buy their first home, and mum and dad earn interest on their savings. Everyone's a winner.
Everyone's a winner, baby, that's the truth.
The new Halifax Family Boost mortgage. Halifax makes it happen.
Your home and savings could be at risk if mortgage repayments are not maintained. Only available in England and Wales. One applicant must hold a Halifax Reward or Ultimate Reward current account. Conditions and exclusions apply.
This is someone making an online booking at Ford.co.uk using the words Ford20 so they can service their Ford for £20 less. And this is someone who didn't get their Ford serviced. You see, at Ford, we use Ford genuine parts and Ford-trained technicians. Plus, if you quote Ford20 when you book with us online, you can receive £20 off. Book now at Ford.co.uk or visit your local participating dealer. Ford Service. No one knows your Ford better.
Retail customers only. At participating Ford dealers. Cannot be used with other promotions. T's and C's apply. Search Ford Service for more information.
At Esso, you can earn double Nectar points when you spend £5 or more on shop items. Esso Nectar, helping fuel your everyday. See esso.co.uk for exclusions.
based on actual events.
After 9/11, everyone was scared. Scared it might happen again.
Critics are calling the report a 5-star gripping political thriller.
The CIA destroyed tapes of interrogations.
I want to find out what was on the tapes.
A large-scale saga of corruption, justice, and overwhelming relevance. Starring Adam Driver, Annette Bening, and John Hamm.
If we stop now, aren't we a part of the cover-up?
The Report in cinemas November 15th and on Amazon Prime Video November 29th. Certificate 15.
Calling all hard-working minicab drivers. Are you the very best London has to offer? Yes? Then Greyhound Cars, one of South London's oldest and most progressive minicab companies, want to speak to you. Spend less time travelling to jobs and more time earning money. With a very busy day circuit, we have high demand and are now offering great bonuses and mileage rates for the very best drivers. You could pay as low as 10% commission. Start today at greyhoundcars.co.uk.
Betting with a traditional bookie is like an orchestra that only plays the triangle. But on the Betfair Exchange, you have more ways to bet with more opportunities to win. You can even lay a bet, which means betting on something not to happen. Or set your own odds and see who takes them on. Why not give it a go? The Betfair Exchange.
T's and C's apply. Exchange basic package customers pay 2% commission. Other charges may apply. 18 plus. BeGambleAware.org.
Teaching shapes lives. If you're considering a career in teaching, you could be eligible for a £26,000 tax-free training bursary. Find out about the financial support to help you start your career in the classroom. Teaching. Every lesson shapes a life. Search Get Into Teaching. Bursary subject to eligibility. Selected subjects only.
Iain Dale. Text 84850. This is LBC.
19 minutes past 11 here on LBC. Sian Berry, co-leader of the Green Party, is here. If you'd like to watch us, you can do so live on the LBC website at lbc.co.uk, on YouTube, Twitter and Facebook. You're not standing in this election. You're a candidate for London Mayor. What do you make of the fact that Nigel Farage isn't standing either?
Well, he should be standing because, I mean, he's an MEP, he has another job at the moment, but he wants to abolish that as quickly as possible. So he should, I mean, the man in the street who said to him, you haven't even got the courage to stand is I think he has a point. And why wouldn't
Well, maybe
Nigel
he might
Farage
run for
put
London
himself
Mayor
out?
as well.
Well, we'll wait for that to transpire. There's quite a lot of candidates coming forwards at the moment.
What's your view on Jo Swinson saying yesterday that a Lib Dem government would revoke Article 50 on day one?
We don't agree with that policy. I mean, we are working with them in the Unite to Remain agreement, but we've been quite clear that we don't agree that revoking without going back to the people is the right thing. We want to see further democracy. We want to see the people given a final say. We're confident there's a Remain majority in the country. We want to we want to finish off the process of putting a deal versus remaining in the EU back to people, and that's been our policy from the very start. Since
fine, but if it's such a bad policy to revoke Article 50, why are you standing down candidates for the Liberal Democrats?
Well, I think
that's just bizarre.
So their policy's got quite muddled now because they keep
not muddled at all. It's the clearest of any party.
They keep clarifying that would be the case only if there's a Liberal Democrat majority.
To be fair, they've said that right from the start.
So when you say to them, well, that's a bit extreme, they go, only if there's a majority, we'll have a people's vote. Otherwise, it's muddied the waters as far as their policies is concerned. We'll be working to make sure they enact a people's vote, and that we get into that group in Parliament that's going to keep doing what's been happening quite well in Parliament in the last throes of Parliament, where people have actually been getting together to put sensible amendments, working together with Labour and with other parties to make sure that the people's vote goes into whatever legislation comes forwards on Brexit, because that is absolutely what we've called for right from the very, very start. And Caroline Lucas has been the strongest voice, one of the most sensible people in Parliament for the last few months.
Let's say you get more than one MP. Now, it's entirely possible that we could have a Groundhog Day where there's another hung Parliament. Say Labour were the largest party in that and they wanted to try and construct a sort of rainbow alliance, rainbow coalition. Would you take part in that?
I think so. Within our party, there are processes and discussions and ways we deal with hung parliaments and what to do. But if you look around the world, there are quite a few places where the Greens and Socialist parties or Labour parties are working in government. One to look at is New Zealand, where we are there supporting the government. We're there putting forwards bills. We're there holding cabinet positions. So the co-leader of the New Zealand Green Party, James Shaw, I think his title is the cabinet member for climate change and statistics, which is rather cool. And they've just put through a very strong climate law, working with Jacinda Ardern, the Prime Minister there. But we are not in the cabinet. We don't have the collective responsibility of being in cabinet. And I think from the Green point of view, we are not one for jumping into coalitions or being tied to a government line or under a government whip, because we don't whip our own people. So something like what's happening in Scotland, for example, where the Greens there have a confidence and supply type arrangement with the SNP, lots of sway over the budget, but not the responsibility for every single policy. I think that's the Lib Dems were hurt enormously by going into full coalition, being responsible for so many Conservative decisions. That's not something any party will want to do again, I don't think.
Now, your big policy for this election is to commit £100 billion a year for a decade to a Green New Deal.
It's what's needed.
Now, that will frighten a lot of people in terms of the amount of money, because that is effectively a seventh of all government expenditure. They will think, well, how on earth are you going to pay for that?
Well, it's of the order of magnitude of something like the education budget, for example. So it isn't
the education budget is nowhere near 100 billion.
But it's tens and tens of billions a year need to go into this.
I can get Henry to look this up, but I'm pretty sure the education budget is about 30 to 40 billion.
But if you add up like the higher education, but it's basically like, would we not want to put as much into climate change as we would into the NHS, as we would into welfare? It's the level of investment that's needed. Now, this is capital investment, and just to run through the numbers, the government debt is currently about 1.7, 1.8 billion. A trillion. We'd add another trillion to that, at 100 billion a year every single year. We've worked out the servicing costs of that debt. It starts off low, obviously, and then by the end of the period, it's up to about 14 billion a year.
Well, if interest rates stay the same.
What we do as part of our policy, now that assumes an increase in interest rates as forecast. And then what we do as part of our policy, we'd put aside 6.5 billion every year from the revenue to service that debt. And that would come from increases in taxes. We're talking about things like a carbon tax and changes to corporation tax. We've got the lowest corporation tax virtually anywhere at the moment. It's very low. It's lower than we pay on the basic rate on our wages. So we know how we'd service the debt, and the money would go into investments that would pay back over time, either assets in terms of the energy system and housing, or things that save money on the NHS, like we'd clean up our air, we'd sort out the transport system. That money would start to flow back through the exchequer. So this is a very robust policy in credit terms, in revenue terms, and in terms of climate change. It's absolutely what's needed. Now, it's at a pace because we've gone so slowly up to now. If we hadn't spent my whole lifetime not dealing with this problem, then we could have been spending less per year. But this has to be done now. We have to reach these targets, because otherwise we're risking runaway climate change, which will cost us a fortune. Just in London, my colleague Caroline Russell has done a study of the climate effects on London, and in the business sector, there are 200 billion pounds worth of business assets at risk from flooding in London. We cannot afford not to do this.
But you are increasing our national debt by 40%, and that will have to be paid back by future generations.
Yes.
You're landing our children and grandchildren with a massive, even more massive debt burden than they've already been saddled with.
Well, the Conservatives have put up the national debt by about that amount already.
You want to put it up by another 40%.
And some of that's gone on things that have made climate change worse. We're talking about the long-term future here and planning for it.
But this is the reason, part of the reason why Moody's have cut our what is it? The rate, our credit rating.
Well, so part of the major part of Moody's change in credit rating is because of the instability within the government and the lack of confidence in our governance.
But it's also
and then
about
the second
spending
part
pledges.
Is the spending pledges from the Conservatives.
And
the criticism they give to the Conservatives' spending pledges is it's not clear what it's actually going to go on. The Conservatives have run around saying, agreeing with what we've been saying for ages, which is austerity needs to end. There's a consensus on that now. And they're announcing money, but they're not saying what it's going to go on. And And the difference with us is we're saying what is going to go on.
They've said a lot of things that it's going to go on, just as John McDonnell has. I mean, your 100 billion.
No. They've shouted out things like the NHS, but we haven't actually heard the plans, and that's what Moody's are saying. And they're also not saying where they're going to get the servicing money from, because the Conservatives won't say that we'll need to put up taxes like corporation tax, things like a carbon tax to pay for this debt. But
John
we've
McDonnell
done that.
looked like an austerity chancellor.
Labour's plans do not go far enough. They are less than what is needed. This is another reason why we need Greens in Parliament pointing out this stuff and actually, using robust arguments for why we need to invest as much as we do and where we can find the money to service that debt and build up the assets and the savings to the exchequer that will come with investing in things like warm, safe homes and cleaner air.
I was looking at your Green Party website last night because I know how to have a good time on a Saturday night, and I was rather, slightly horrified, I suppose, to find this clause, DR 408. A Green government will make powdered cocaine available in fixed dosages at fixed prices to people who wish to use the drug for recreational purposes for personal use only through the specialist pharmacy model. I mean, I read that as free cocaine for everybody.
We have got a comprehensive new drugs policy that was passed in our October.
It is a very long drugs policy, and I accept that is a one sentence out of it.
And we've looked at every aspect of this from a public health point of view, and it's very, very clear that we need to be pulling all kinds of drugs out of the hands of criminals. We need to be making sure that anyone who takes drugs is given the best advice, is given the purest drugs and is able to do that in a regulated market. And you will find, everyone should go and read our new drugs policy because it has been worked out by the experts, by people who work in the sector, looking after people who've got addictions. It's looking after people who work in the NHS, people who work in harm reduction and in law enforcement. And it's very, very clear that we do need to fundamentally rethink. That, again, is something that's more or less a matter of consensus, but a lot of people just talk about decriminalising cannabis. I think we need to look at it in a much, much deeper way, in a way that really is from the bottom up and really
essentially free cocaine for anybody who wants it.
It wouldn't be free. It would be a regulated market but you can.
But a free supply, fixed dosages at fixed prices. So you're happy for anybody who wants cocaine to be able to buy it from essentially the state.
Every drug needs to be looked at from the point of view of the harm it causes and dealt with proportionately. And cocaine does cause harm. It's an addictive drug. If you're going to be getting it from anybody, you need to be getting it from somebody who's going to be giving you good advice and limiting the dose. We limit the dose of paracetamol that people can buy.
You can't compare cocaine
at
with
the
paracetamol.
Moment. But that's a harm reduction effect. It's the same thing. Don't take a lot of paracetamol. It's very dangerous.
Quite a few people asking on our YouTube channel and on Twitter why you're wearing a white poppy rather than a red one.
I'm wearing a red poppy as well.
Oh, you are wearing? Yeah. I couldn't see that.
And I think it's really important that we say very, very clearly the message never again in relation to wars. And I think it's very important that we recognise and honour everybody who is harmed. So that's the civilians and the soldiers who are fighting on all sides. And I think it's very important that we do that. And that's why I wear a white poppy, because that is a broader message of peace and a broader message of commemoration of all the victims of war. The red poppy is very specifically about serving soldiers, although the British Legion have softened their stance on that this year, and they've said they are also to commemorate some other victims of war. But I think to give the fuller picture of my beliefs, I wear both.
Okay. More from Sian Berry in just a minute. In fact, more from you. We're going to put your questions to the co-leader of the Green Party, 0345 6060 973. It's 11:31. News headlines on LBC from Philip Chrysikos.
A 2-minute silence has been observed across the country and on LBC as the nation honoured and remembered its war dead on Remembrance Sunday. Members of the royal family and political leaders laid wreaths at the cenotaph in central London. Prince Charles laid the first on behalf of the Queen as Her Majesty watched from a nearby balcony. Police officers on their days off are helping support people affected by flooding across South Yorkshire. River levels are starting to fall, but 7 severe flood warnings remain along the River Don. The Chancellor is refusing to be drawn on some of his own spending plans for the Conservatives, despite attacking Labour's figures. Sajid Javid says Labour's proposals could bankrupt the UK. Labour says the Conservatives' assessment isn't accurate. Liberal Democrats are also promising to invest in public services. LBC weather. Showers on eastern coasts of England and Scotland. Sunny spells elsewhere. A high of 10 degrees.
This is LBC.
If your ideas challenge the status quo, if you have advised people you had no right advising, if you built companies and lost companies and built them again, if you've been called a pillock, a dreamer, an innovator and a genius, if you thrive in the 11th hour, if you have blown it and completely nailed it in the same day, prepare for your next departure.
Do business right. Travel Virgin Atlantic.
Swell Heating is on a myth-busting mission. Painting your radiators black won't make them hotter. But there is lots of smart technology that can cut your heating bills. For specialist advice on innovative heating devices, visit swellheating.com. Rely on us to keep you warm.
Decorate the halls with buy one, get one half price on all coloured emulsion. Homebase. Feels good to be home. Includes paint mixing. Terms at homebase.co.uk.
When you're looking for professional tradespeople you can trust, the outlook is always sunny when you use trustedtrader.com.
TrustedTrader.com. The Mazda sale means this autumn there's no time like the present, and there's no present like a brand new Mazda. And now there's an additional £500 off our entire range of cars. So if you want an award-winning Mazda, the time is now. Visit your local Mazda dealer or search Mazda Sale. £500 Mazda sale savings available on new vehicles registered between the 21st of October and 30th of November 2019. Subject to availability at participating dealers. Retail sales only. T's and C's apply.
I'm sorry. You have progressive memory loss.
When you hear these words, the outlook is bleak, but we're working to change that. We're Recognition Health, the brain and mind experts, and we're running clinical studies in London and Guildford. If you volunteer, you'll receive free access to a new generation medication as well as comprehensive medical care. With your help, we can change the future of MCI, as in mild cognitive impairment and Alzheimer's disease.
You have progressive memory loss. But here's what we can do.
To find out more about Recognition Health and taking part, go to brainandmindexperts.com.
Play along with our 10-second teaser. Ready? Which sector generates more revenue than movies, cruise ships, recorded music, theme parks and spectator sports combined? The answer is gambling. If you got that right, you must be pretty smart. So you'll know who to choose for your business accounting, audit and tax affairs. Search Barnes Rofe. Clever accountants for business.
Leading Britain's conversation. Iain Dale. Tweet at LBC.
It's 25 to 12 on LBC. Sian Berry, the co-leader of the Green Party, is with us and is about to take your calls. One space left on the switchboard, 0345 6060 973. You can watch us live on our website, on YouTube, Twitter and Facebook. How does this co-leader thing work? Because I read Labour are looking at copying you now.
Yeah, so we're even leading the way in terms of how we organise our leadership teams. And it works brilliantly well. Me and Jonathan, we're quite a tight team. Also with Amelia Womack, our deputy leader, and working collaboratively like that is great because you can always get your second opinion. There's always somebody to cover for you. We job share, so one of us is on shift at a time. Jonathan and Caroline have been doing the big TV this morning. You've made me come in today, but in theory I was doing some other work this morning. And then this evening I'm on the Westminster on BBC. So it's a good way of making sure we've always got
one
someone
thing which
available.
no one ever understands. It's actually when at the start of an election campaign, you want to give fair goes to all the different parties, and it's like doing a little jigsaw to try and fit people in. But we're very grateful that you've come in.
No problem.
Right, Mark is in Hebden Bridge. Hello, Mark.
Hello.
Hello. What's your question?
So, Sian, you started your interview about half an hour ago mentioning Remain Alliance, Unite to Remain, and the Remain parties in just your first couple of sentences. There are something like a quarter of the Green voters that voted Green in the 2015 election that then voted to leave in the 2016 referendum. And that's just a small part of the centre-left and Green vote that voted for Brexit in 2016. Not to mention the millions of others who voted Remain but have decided since to accept the result. Where do you think people like that, people like me, should place our vote in the 2019 general election?
Hiya, Mark. So Mark is part of a group called Green Leaves, which campaigns for Leave within the Green Party. And yeah, I mean, like I said before, there are arguments for leaving and arguments for staying. It's not a completely 100% issue on either side. And when we voted on our position as a party, about 90% of our members backed taking Remain as our position in the referendum, and our members are overwhelmingly in support of having another vote, including ones who still want to leave, because I mean a people's vote would give both sides that final say, and it gives a chance for Leave people to make the argument as well. But yeah, in this general election, we are putting forward a very strong Remain position. So I really hope our supporters will vote for us for all the other reasons that you vote Green, because we look at things in the round, because we want to change the system, transform the economy, sort out climate chaos, and that you'd have to overlook that side of us in order to back us.
Many people, Sian, are not privileged as you and I are to be members of the Green Party, and they therefore look at us as an outsider, and they decide whether or not they can trust us. Now, don't you think there's something inconsistent in a party that campaigned in 2010 for a referendum in the general election then, 2014 in the Euro election for a referendum, earned the referendum in the 2015 general election, which Caroline Lucas MP then voted for in late 2015. In 2016, the party became a permitted campaigner during the course of the referendum. I'm going to have to hurry you. And then you don't follow the result.
But Mark, you're demonstrating there that we're a completely consistent party, wanting democracy and wanting more democracy. And I think you'll agree that the 2016 referendum didn't set out the terms of Brexit. It was to agree with the principle. And now we know the terms. Now we've got a deal we can put back to the people. We should have that further democracy again. And I think, like I said earlier, we're also a home for people in the Conservative Party and the Labour Party who want to Remain, and I think that is our role in this election, is to be a strong Remain party.
So, Mark, who are you going to vote for?
I am utterly flummoxed, Ian, because I think, like many, many millions, we must be talking about 4-odd million Labour voters, about 500,000 Green voters, many hundreds of thousands of Lib Dem and SNP voters. There isn't a centre-left party that hasn't done something akin to what the Green Party has done and essentially betrayed the vote that the referendum campaign called for.
But we disagree with it we didn't want to vote to leave in the first place, and I think we have been consistent, Mark. But please, vote for the climate. This is the climate election, Mark.
OK. Mark, thank you very much. Graham in Bushy has sent an email saying the Green Party is the only major party not to adopt the IHRA definition on anti-Semitism. Why not?
We're still debating that within the party.
Why?
We've got a very democratic party, and we have had motions come forwards to conference which have been referred back for further discussion. I mean, I voted to adopt it within my work within the council in Camden, within the London Assembly, and that's an easy thing to do. It's it's good to have this wider definition of the sort of tropes that go alongside overt anti-Semitism, and to make sure that people are abiding by a wider code of conduct. I think that's a good idea. But within a party's structures, you've got to incorporate it within your disciplinary processes, and that takes a little bit more time. But I think,
but if all the other parties have done it, why can't you?
Robust. Well, because we're more of a democratic party than other parties, our processes do take.
Doesn't send out a great message, though, does it, to Jewish voters?
I really hope that Jewish voters have seen the robustness with which we are tackling anti-Semitism when the cases are brought to us. Certainly the campaign against anti-Semitism has been working and sending allegations, and we've been putting them through our disciplinary process in as rapid a way as we can, and we do need to be working towards this. We'll watch this space because we are working on it.
Chris is in Naples. Hello, Chris.
Hello there. I'd like to vote Green, and it's something I've thought about over the years. So we are pro public transport line. I've heard you talking about these massive sums you're prepared to invest in green infrastructure so that the infrastructure is there for people to take the green choice. But I'm just so puzzled by your anti-HS2 line. It just doesn't stack up, because there's a huge issue addressing the railways at the moment. It's not speed, of course, it's capacity. And there's a huge problem with managing capacity, which HS2 addresses. That's the reason for it. HS2 is the wrong name. It should be high capacity 2.
Okay.
I just don't understand your reason behind your objections to HS2.
Sure.
Investment in public transport is absolutely. I used to be a transport campaigner, and that's absolutely something that I'm committed to. HS2 is the wrong investment. It's investment in capacity into London from Birmingham, and actually we'd rather spend that money, which is something like £88 billion now is the total budget for HS2. We'd rather spend it on railway improvements across the country and on transforming local public transport and walking and cycling as well. We've got an excellent proposal to redeploy that investment, and this is not the new investment we were talking about earlier. This is redeployment of HS2 into £56 billion worth of investment in local rail links, improving rail in the north and around the country, and in Wales as well, and then spending £25 billion across every town and city, investing in walking and cycling and new bus routes.
How do you
and things
invest
like that.
in walking?
You improve the pavements. There's a thing in London called the Healthy Streets Indicators, and there's 10 things you can use to assess the street about whether it's quiet and clean air, and whether there are places to sit, and whether there's shade, and think when you don't have those things, it deters people from walking, particularly if they're less able, if there's nowhere to sit and things like that. So you make the streets able to be used by people of all ages by sorting it out in those ways.
Chris,
and that takes some money.
Okay, Chris, thank you very much. Let's go to Andy, who's a Greens Party supporter in Hastings. Hello, Andy.
Hello. Yes, I have a question. We've been talking a lot about tactical voting, and we've been talking about these sort of alliances across the country. But the key thing is when these alliances are struck and when these sort of tactical voting takes on, very often the person who suffers is the supporter of a smaller party. So one of the things that happens is that when you have this going on, is it encourages larger parties like the Labour Party to sort of infiltrate smaller parties like the Greens at the local level, and then what they can do is they can scupper the candidates, and that means that the people who are the actual supporters, the supporters of the smaller party, are divested of their right of a vote. What I was surprised in the conversation we've had is that I thought it was just sort of a local thing that was going on, but it seems to me now that it's the National Green Party that's sort of encouraging this sort of thing. I think that encourages criminality, because it's quite easy at the local level for a larger party that's perhaps got a few issues to organize informal infiltration of smaller parties just to win votes in marginal constituencies. I would like your guest to comment on that.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
Well, let's do that, Sian.
That is part of the problem that I was highlighting earlier, and I don't know about infiltration as such, but I think
it's a big thing in Hastings. Apparently,
we do see a lot of Greens, and these are my members, and they've joined the party. They've maybe become a local councillor, and now they're standing for Parliament, and they put their name forwards. And too often they see a complete pile-on from people, often from the Labour Party, saying to them, "Why are you standing? You don't have a right to exist, and your point of view doesn't count. It's all about one thing." And I do not like that local pressure being put on my individual candidates, and I think it's really that's why I want to do this at a national level. It's why when given permission by my party, I was happy to go and talk in a grown up and honest way with Plaid Cymru and the Lib Dems, and I would very much like to have that conversation with Labour as well, because there is too much that goes on that feels it feels horrible to be put under that kind of pressure and told that you're doing the wrong thing. If you're a local person, just standing up for your own community and wanting to make those points about climate change in Europe and investment in the local area and saving local green spaces and all of those things that you stand for as an MP, and to be attacked is really harsh, and I don't like that at all.
Well, if you were doubting your decision to come and see us for an hour this morning, Val Saunders on Twitter has tweeted this: Iain Dale with Sian Berry. Never heard of her. She's made an impression on me, though. So there you go.
Does she say if it's a good impression,
Well,
though?
I think I'm interpreting that as a positive tweet for you. So anyway, more questions for Sian Berry, co-leader of the Green Party, in just a moment. It's 11:47.
Coming up at 12 on LBC, Majid Nawaz.
9 Russian business people who gave money to the Conservative Party are named in a secret intelligence report. Should the Prime Minister release the Russia report?
Majid Nawaz on LBC.
If a bank or financial advisor persuaded you to move your savings into an ISA, unit trust or investment bond and you lost money, you can make a claim for compensation. If unsuccessful, you can then refer it free to the Financial Ombudsman. Now, if the prospect of pursuing a claim feels a little daunting, or you just don't have the time, then you can ask Goodwin Barrett for help. To discover how much you may be owed, text GOOD to 60777. Text GOOD to 60777 now.
Goodwin Barrett.
The 7 dwarves were in a bit of a pickle. With the mines closing down, their finances were somewhat fickle. They looked to downsize their home fast, so Snow White could make her debts a thing of the past.
Boys, the cottage is looking well rough.
So they spoke to the friendly team at Property Rescue, who buy properties in any condition and can offer a guaranteed sale in as little as 2 days, hassle-free. Fast forward to living happily ever after. Visit propertyrescue.co.uk. Property Rescue. Fast forward to sold.
That's the sound of you, squeezing £2,000 out of your old polluting vehicle. The Mayor Sadiq Khan has introduced the new ULEZ car and motorcycle scrappage scheme to help tackle London's toxic air. You could get £2,000 for scrapping a car and £1,000 for scrapping a motorcycle, which you could use for a newer, cleaner vehicle or other ways to get around. The scheme is only available to people on certain means-tested benefits or non-means-tested disability benefits who own a polluting car or motorcycle. Check if you're eligible. Search TfL Scrappage. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
What is back and lay betting? Backing is a traditional bet, like betting that the action hero will save the day. But on the Betfair exchange, you can lay a bet, which is betting on the same thing not happening and taking money from those who think it won't. Why not give it a try? The Betfair Exchange.
T's and C's apply. Exchange basic package customers pay 2% commission. Other charges may apply. 18 plus. BeGambleAware.org.
The Mazda sale means this autumn there's no time like the present. And there's no present like a brand new Mazda. And now there's an additional £500 off our entire range of cars. So if you want an award-winning Mazda, the time is now. Visit your local Mazda dealer or search Mazda sale. £500 Mazda sale savings available on new vehicles registered between the 21st of October and 30th of November 2019. Subject to availability at participating dealers. Retail sales only. T's and C's apply.
At Esso, you can earn double Nectar points when you spend £5 or more on shop items. Esso Nectar, helping fuel your everyday. See esso.co.uk for exclusions.
Decorate the halls with buy one, get one half price on all coloured emulsion. Homebase. Feels good to be home. Includes paint mixing. Terms at homebase.co.uk.
Sharing credit card details on scraps of loose paper. Finding battered receipts in the wash. Stressing out your accountant. Expense management doesn't have to be stuck in the dark ages. Say hello to Soldo. Company cards that do your expenses for you. Give your team prepaid cards to simply spend, snap the receipt, and that's that. Spend smarter. See the light at soldo.com.
Iain Dale on LBC.
9 minutes to 12. Sian Berry taking your calls. Gwyneth is in Wigan. Hello, Gwyneth.
Hello, Ian. Pleasure to speak to you.
And you.
My point is, I'd like to ask Sian, the Green Party advocates the free movement of people, doesn't it?
Yes.
Right. Well, I'll set out my stall here. I asthma very, very, very badly. It was turned to me as an adult. Now, I've always lived a kind life. I've treated my environment kindly. I've never had a car, never will have a car. Now, what I don't get is you want the free movement of people, but just think about how much pollution that causes, and that just does not add up to me.
It's a good point, isn't it, Sian?
Yeah, well, this is why I argued so hard for a sustainable transport system. And actually, you're right, part of sustainable transport isn't just changing the journeys people make to new different ways of moving. It's actually putting things within reach so that you don't have to take long journeys to access goods and services and things like that. So centralised hospitals, out-of-town hospitals. There's been the big row about hospital parking, but people are forced to drive to hospital because the hospital's been moved to the ring road and there's no bus to get to it and things like that. So town planning is something that I'm actually quite obsessed with.
There's no hospital
because
in the
it's
country
about
that
putting
doesn't have a
things.
bus service going to it, is there?
But you need to go to hospital at night and things when there's not necessarily a bus. I mean, people, there's a very good argument for why you shouldn't have to pay to park at a hospital if it's been put in that sort of place. But that's so it's getting planning right, putting homes in places where you're not forced to own a car. What I call forced car ownership, car dependency, is something that you can measure and is something that's getting actually worse.
But you're kind of avoiding the question here. So Gwyneth was talking about free movement of people, which inevitably means that the population of the country grows in a way that it wouldn't necessarily do if there wasn't free movement of people. I mean, widening this out a bit, isn't the main problem about climate change overpopulation? And if we didn't have the world so overpopulated, there wouldn't be so many problems. The Green Party back in the 1980s, I'm reliably informed on Twitter, so feel free to deny this, that there was a two-child policy that you had back in the 1980s.
I cannot comment on Green policy when I was a small child. But no, we don't focus on population as an issue on its own, because I think it's down that route lie a lot of dangerous policies, a lot of authoritarian policies that we don't support. We are in favour of empowering people to make their own choices about how many children they have, and when people have free choice, when people have access to contraception, when people have a secure life where they're not worrying about how they're going to be looked after in their old age, people have many fewer children. So it's not a problem that needs sorting out on its own. It's a problem that sorts itself out once you create a fairer, greener society.
We've only got 5 minutes to go, so I'm going to Gwyneth, thank you very much for your question, and let's try and rattle through 2 or 3 over the next 5 minutes. Mike is in Bridgend. Mike, what's your question, please?
Hi there. Bearing in mind that Britain is funded entirely by the taxation of businesses and individuals like myself, the basic earner, basic taxpayer, and also funded by the international markets, I'm just staggered at the kind of lack of economic spending £100 billion extra on top of the existing deficit every year for 10 years and increasing the national debt by 40%. I'm just staggered by the lack of. I just cannot believe that that's the policy with any kind of rationale behind it. Because if we have a situation in the future where we have a future crash and we have to look to the markets to borrow and they won't lend to us, we'll be in a terrible situation. And the Green Party and all the people who'd suffer then would be all the poorest. Just like it happened in Greece. I just find it's a staggeringly a very unusual policy. On that, to have a policy on that scale of spending on that scale.
Sian?
We do need to invest in all of these things. We need to transform the economy, and these are capital investments that we have to make in the short term. But we also need to look at where we are borrowing this money from. And you said the markets. People buy bonds as investments as part of pension funds and things like that. But a lot of people's ordinary savings are invested in places that are not government bonds. And I think there's a really interesting letter from the people who actually invented the Green New Deal. Andrew Sims and Caroline Lucas in the FT this week, talking about the way that we could redeploy people's savings so that they're the ones who are lending the money to the government through their savings. And that's a really, really good way of making our economy less dependent on, for example, international finance and more dependent on our own assets and making us more sustainable and resilient as an economy there as well. So that is a good question. We don't want to be dependent on people lending us money from elsewhere, but there is plenty of money in people's savings that we can deploy into this as well.
I'm not sure that's a vote-winning policy. People will think, well, why would they trust a Green government with our savings?
Well, government bonds are one of the safest places to invest. There's a lot of people. This is why the bond rate is so low.
Only if the international markets have confidence in the British economy.
Which they do. Bond rates are very, very
well, they
low
do at the moment. But would they, in a government that wants to increase public expenditure by that amount?
Well, as I say, I've been looking through the Moody's rating of the country, and it seems to me like most of the failings that they lay out there, particularly the governance wants to do with Brexit, but also the lack of clarity upon where the money's going to go and what the payback will be from their investments. We get over that because our investments are in things that improve health and lives and resilience and the general robustness of the economy.
George in Cheshire has texted this. Could you put to Sian, I'm a dairy farmer, and naturally as a farmer I have strong environmental concerns. I find that elsewhere in Europe a farmer's natural vote would often be green. However, I feel that the UK Green Party manifesto is just actually very weak on agriculture. Could you ask why this is, please?
I think our policy is stronger than that would characterise itself. We're very strong on land use, on the rights of farmers, and on improving the quality of farming. And I think that's really, really good stuff. But you're completely right that a lot of places, the sort of farming parties, which you often have in parts of Germany, the people who are farmers, for example, in New Zealand. I described earlier how we're part of the government in New Zealand. We have a lot of support there from people in farming communities because our policies are in the round. They look at the whole systems, and farmers do that too. You have to look at the land and
right.
The economy. And
final question. It's got to be very quick from Alan in Tunbridge Wells. Go ahead, Alan.
Oh, hi, Sean. As you're aware, Gatwick Airport didn't get planning permission for a second runway, but are you aware of their latest proposal, which is the emergency runway becomes a second runway, which then allows a 60% growth for more intensive use of the main runway, and by doing that, they don't have to have any planning process, so no consultation for the growth of the main runway. Are you aware of this?
I am aware of lots and lots of different airport expansion plans, and they all need to be stopped. I mean, we need to have strong policies to cap the level of aviation that we do in this country, and then share out the flights that we can take more fairly, because at the moment the very richest fly an awful lot and they're blowing our carbon budgets just on their own. Ordinary people are not responsible for the amount of flights that we're taking.
Okay, Sian Berry, thank you very much indeed for joining us over the last hour. If you've missed any of the last hour, you can listen again on the Cross Question podcast in about an hour's time, and also you can catch up on the full interview on our YouTube channel. Next Sunday, the leader of the Liberal Democrats, Jo Swinson, will be joining me in the studio at 11. I'll be back tomorrow from 7 with a Think Tank Cross Question at 8. Coming up at 3, it's Ian Payne. Next, it's Majid Nawaz.
Good to see you on a Sunday. It must be election time. Coming up this week, more than 100 of the country's highest achieving women will call for all women to be told exactly what their male colleagues earn so they can demand the same money. Do we need an Equal Pay Act? What about an ethnic pay gap as well? Before that, Health Secretary Matt Hancock has been accused of white-splaining by Conservative Muslim peer Baroness Warsi.